So these are my favorite ones, and this is the last book I've read, which is written by Herbert Wells, and it's called The Island of Dr. Moreau. So it's basically a combination of like a drama, maybe a little bit of thriller. So it's about a scientist
Wait. Hold your horses. Let's start from the beginning. My name is Natalie.
Oh, right. Sorry. Hi, my name's Katya.
So we're teachers of Big Apple School, and we're going to speak about books today.
So let's start. So I think we should start by giving a definition to the word genre, which is a type of music, art, movie, books, anything that is very easy to recognize because it has some sort of peculiarities. And since we're talking about books, I think we should start with fiction. So how would you define fiction?
Fiction is something unreal. Unreal events, unreal people, so all that is unreal. And books about them.
Imaginary situations, yeah.
Exactly. So what is your favorite book in this genre?
Oh my God, asking me what is my favorite fiction book is like asking a parent, who's your favorite child? No, we can't do that. I have way too many. But I think it's worth mentioning that when we talk about fiction, we can also have subdivisions, some sort of subtypes of fiction. For example, detective fiction, which is a story about some sort of crime or mystery that a detective is trying to solve, the classic Sherlock Holmes.
The name's Sherlock Holmes, and the address is 221B Baker Street.
So it can be science fiction, which is
something about spaceships. Space, traveling into space, again.
Technology, future, all of that, that's true.
Future
so do you have any sort of favorites? Are you into science fiction?
I'm into that definitely, but I don't have a favorite one. What about you?
I would say that I do have a favorite series in science fiction. So this is a series written by Orson Scott Card, and it's named The Ender's Game. I think right now it has around 8-9 books in it. Highly recommend. So it's also about space travel, different galaxies, and the action takes place in distant future. So I think it's like 3000 something. So the year of 3000.
Wow.
Fantastic ideas over there. Yeah.
There is also a movie.
Yes, right. There is also a movie. That's true. Well, and since we're talking about fiction, I can't but ask you about one genre that might not be loved by many, which is fan fiction.
Yeah, fan fiction is art by fans based on the original story. So, for example, Twilight or something like that.
So written by fans based on the original sort of story in the book, in the movie, and so on. So what are your thoughts?
I'm not a huge fan, to be honest, but I used to read some fan fiction stories based on the Harry Potter stories, because I remember when I read the 5th book, the 4th, and were serious black dice, I was like, no, I'm not taking it. I
want to escape from it,
Exactly.
so I'm going to write my own story.
Exactly. But I didn't write, I just read.
You just read?
So, yeah, but I once actually wrote something, but based on Sherlock Holmes.
Oh, the classic, the classic. So,
it's fascinating.
What about you guys? How do you feel about fan fiction? Are you a reader, a writer, or a hater?
What about books in dystopia genre? Have you read anything recently?
Sure. So first of all, I think we need to give some definition. So dystopia is the genre where the action takes place in the future, but it's a very, very dark future where everything is extremely bad. And answering your question, yes, I have read, I think, what is considered to be the classics like George Orwell's 1984, Ray Bradbury's 451 Fahrenheit. Actually, just recently, I read a very interesting dystopian book, which is written by Vladimir Voinovich, and it's called Moscow 2042. And this is some sort of surreal. It really stands out from the other dystopian books because it's just so weird. So it's basically about a person who is a Soviet dissident living in Germany in 1986, but he has a chance to go to the Moscow of the future, Moscow 2042, sorry. So, and what he expects to see is absolutely different from what he actually sees. Yeah. So, but what about, wait, you've just said that you're not a huge fan of dystopia or the book 1984?
No, I love dystopias. It's actually my favorite genre. I love them. I read all of them probably. Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of 1984 because it seems a little bit too dark, even for dystopia, but I love all of them, all the others. For example, The Brave New World.
Aldous Huxley.
Yeah, I love books by Strugatsky's. If you know, I just love them so much.
This is on my to-be-read list.
You must, really. It's like one of the best.
Highly recommend.
Highly recommend.
Got it.
Yeah, and recently I've been reading Atlas Shrugged. So you must have heard about this. probably.
I kind of, to be honest, I have always thought that it is some sort of a dystopia / philosophy.
It is.
Like
it is.
on the border.
Yeah, I've been reading it for like a little bit. I've read maybe 200 pages, and it's like 3,000 pages in total. And it's a little bit controversial because it was written in the 60s, if I'm not mistaken, and it's by an American, writer. And she's really anti-communist, and it's all about private property and all this stuff, and it's really opposed to communism.
When you said 3,000 pages, this is not how you advertise a book, Ignore this part. So let's just read that. But one more interesting genre, though, is cyberpunk. So are you familiar with the genre?
I am, but can you tell me more?
So basically, this is also a genre about some sort of future, very often dark future, but mostly about the world run or developed by the robots, by technology. And I have to come clean, this is not a very common genre in books. However, we can see it used a lot in different video games. Because in literature, very often it comes together with science fiction, cyberpunk, sometimes some fantasy. So to be honest, I wouldn't come up with a book that is pure cyberpunk. So if you guys know anything that comes to your mind, please share in the comment section. So sometimes we have the situation when we want just to escape from reality, dive deep into fantasy, and the dreams is something. So what genre is there to help us?
Fantasy, of course.
So what is that?
Fantasy is a story about some fairy tale creatures, some, again, imaginary creatures like hobbits,
dwarves,
fairies,
trolls, fairies, you name it,
all of these things.
So who would you say are the biggest writers in this genre?
Rudykh, probably.
Our both favorite, I have to come clean, yes.
Tolkien, of course.
The classic.
George Martin, who I don't really like, to be honest.
We might have a long argument over here, but we're not going to. We'll save it for after the video time. But yeah, that's true. In Russia, we also have Max Fry, we have Sergei Lukyanenko. One more foreign author, Neil Gaiman, who I also adore.
Yeah, like
what are your favorites?
So, books specifically.
Both writers and books.
I love Terry Pratchett, like you said before. Yeah.
I'm very happy to hear that.
I've read almost all of his books, I think, and I love the series about witches. If you remember this. Yeah.
Fantastic, yeah. Anything in general, so what do you think is the proportion of fantasy books among the books you read? So is it what you read most? Is this something that you read occasionally, rarely?
I think at the moment I read much more of non-fiction, to be honest. So yeah, but at the moment I'm reading Nations by Terry Pratchett.
Also by Terry Pratchett. Yes. His name is going to sound a lot while we talk about fantasy, because I have to say that this is my #1 favorite writer, to the extent that I have several tattoos to commemorate his work, devoted to his work and so on. But I do also love books by Neil Gaiman, for example, The Ocean at the End of the Lane.
I love this book.
Neverwhere,
it's
really nice.
Caroline, probably.
Caroline, yes, this is also one of his stories. You might remember the cartoon and so on.
Yeah,
yes.
creepy, but at the same like childish.
I love the fact that Natalie and we mentioned not the, I don't want to say it, but mainstream fantasy writers, because when we think of fantasy, most people immediately think about Tolkien, George Martin with his Game of Thrones and so on. But yeah, check out Neil Gaiman, Terry Pratchett. You can start with The Color of Magic in this case.
Oh, yes.
Max Fry, such nice fantasy. But again,
yeah, I'm not a huge
we
fan,
might
yeah.
have our disagreements on that. But I think it also needs to be mentioned that fantasy, just like fiction in general, can be subdivided into different genres, because we can have some sort of steampunk fantasy, humorous fantasy, city fantasy, and so on and so forth. So there's always something to your taste.
Okay guys, time to tickle your nerves. Horror stories, thriller stories, what's the difference?
Oh, that's a good question. So the horror stories are stories designed specifically to frighten you, to create the feeling of fear, terror maybe. Whereas thrillers, even though they're kind of, come close to horror, so their idea and their goal is just to create emotions. It might be fear, it might be tension. So usually it's some sort of a story that makes you glued to your, glued to your armchair, glued to the book, or glued to the screen, whatever you are doing. Yeah, but very often they come close. And if we talk about horror specifically, so what is the name that comes to mind?
So Stephen King, of course.
The king of horror, Stephen King. So what are your feelings? Have you read any of his books?
Yeah, almost all of his book actually. I
All
love
of
his works.
Wow.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you have any favorite?
I don't think so, but they all almost equally good.
Because I know that nowadays most of the books that are, you know, spoken about are It because of the movie.
Of course, but it's so basic.
Carrie. Oh,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I mean mainstream, I
Sorry.
would say.
I have to say that I tried reading Stephen King's books once back when I was a student, but I had night full of nightmares, really. So I woke up and said, okay, I guess no more. But good enough. Stephen King also writes books that are not horror, but rather thrillers. And I have read one recently called The Apt Pupil, about a boy living in the US who meets a former Nazi officer and what he learns from him. So it's a bit of a thriller. But I have to say as well that I do not know about you, but when it comes to thrillers, very often I read the book and I just forget.
Yeah, it's just a one-time thing. You read, you forget, you get the emotions, that's enough.
Can you remember any sort of thriller books?
Yeah, Gone Girl, probably.
Julian, there is a movie as well, right?
Yes, definitely. It's pretty good.
Thriller movies get a lot of rating as well.
Yeah,
So I guess in this case, Natalie and I will need your help, guys. So can you recommend some good thriller books that are worth reading? Make sure to write the names down there in the comment section. So guys, thank you for watching. But now I'm kind of curious, what are your favorite genres and your favorite books? Well, you can share it down there in the comment section or in our private Telegram chat. What's that, you might ask? Well, this is the space where you can practice your reading, listening, speaking, everything in Telegram. This is also the space where you can chat to us teachers. This is the space where we post our vocabulary list and so on and so forth. So if you want to check it out, just follow the link in the video description.
Exactly. Also check out our website, which is www.bekappelschool.com. You can find podcasts, videos, and other interesting stuff there.
So that was it for today. That was Katya.
And Natalie.
See you around.
See ya.